Hi, I'm Richard Ma, CEO of QuantStamp, and today I'm going to talk about how, despite all the hacks, the future is still DeFi. So DeFi has been growing really rapidly recently, and I think we've really seen product market fit with DeFi. It's possibly one of the first category of applications that I think has achieved product market fit. And the vision of DeFi is to replicate many of the financial products and services that are in traditional finance, but now on the blockchain and without a central authority, so people can basically do many of these functions in a permissionless way. Right now, the value that's locked in DeFi has recently surpassed $1.6 billion. And actually today, it's actually surpassed $2 billion. And this has really, built as a trend over the whole of 2019. And now with the launch of Compound, it's really increased. So why does this matter? Well, it means that people are actively lending, borrowing, using DEXs and on-chain derivatives. And more often, we've seen this trend accelerate. So in December of 2019, there was less than 700 million that was locked in DeFi. So it's around tripled in the last 6 months. And it also indicates a desire for an alternative financial system. Because as we see with COVID, central banks are printing more and more money, and the interest rates that are available in the traditional financial system are quite low. So, people are looking for a better option. One of the benefits of DeFi is composability. So what that means is like, the analogy is like money Legos. So you can produce components that live on the blockchain, and other companies can then build on top of those components and make more interesting applications. So by linking up these different applications, you can get more functionality without having to repeat all the work that someone else is doing to build up these building blocks for you. And over time, this has a compounding network effect, where as more and more services in the ecosystem are available, it becomes easier to build additional services on top of it. And one example of that is called R-trees. So R-trees, they allow people to donate interest that is parked into an app called Compound and use that to plant trees. So, R-trees, they have a nonprofit that is planting trees. And if you deposit your DAI, your savings, into their contract, your principal is actually preserved. So you're not really losing any money on your principal, but the extra interest is going to their fund to plant trees. And they're using this composability concept because R-trees is based on top of R-DAI, which allows you to separate the principal and the interest from your interest payment. And also Compound, which is an app that allows you to get interest on your money on the blockchain. So, and Compound is growing quite rapidly. In June of this year, they released a Comp token, which is a governance token that's being farmed out, being provided to people that use the Compound system. And since they had this distribution, Compound moved from the second most used project in DeFi to the first. So they eclipsed MakerDAO in that process. And if you look at the chart on the right, I think it's definitely a testament to the incentives of doing yield farming because it can increase the interest rates, but we also see more and more teams doing this. This is kind of the yield farming trend. It's also, in a short amount of time, the comp token has become the highest market cap token of any DeFi token. Over 700 million has flowed into it to take advantage of these yields, because you get the existing yields that you can't really get in traditional finance, where the yields are all below 1%, but you also get an additional yield from the distribution of the comp. And so this is kind of a double-edged sword. It provides new opportunities, but also new risks. So I'll talk about the opportunities first. One of the opportunities is that Compound is basically like a decentralized money market. So people can supply, other people can borrow using their collateral and pay interest and get interest, and it's all being facilitated by the smart contracts. And every day, if you're a borrower or you're a supplier, you get paid additional comp. And this has, at times made the interest rates as high as 50 to 100% a year. It fluctuates based on the overall usage. The major risk is that, one is that most people don't really understand the smart contracts, and so they're kind of trusting Compound to do a good job with their audits and reviews. But also the way that people are getting these yields are also becoming more and more complex. People are trying to farm extra yields by basically borrowing funds using their collateral, and then redepositing those funds into a different wallet, and then borrowing against those again and over. Some apps allow you to do that 4 times, where you're kind of folding your deposit back, but theoretically you can do it even more than 4 times. The problem with this is that it increases the leverage in the system. So it's kind of an indirect, incentive that people are trying to capture by doing this. But it increases the smart contract risk as well, because there's going to be a lot more value that's locked into these contracts. If you look at traditional finance, there's very few companies that within, a month of launch, they can get so much money deposited into their systems, 700 million within a month. The other risk is that it increases the risk of liquidation. So depending on what asset you're borrowing and supplying, if the value of your collateral falls significantly, or the value of what you're borrowing goes up significantly, you can get liquidated, and there's a fee that's associated with getting your position liquidated. And that fee could be potentially a lot higher than what you're earning interest rates in the first place. So those are kind of the risks. Regardless of the opportunities and risks, it's a very new ecosystem. This has not really been around for a very long time, but it has a lot of promise. It can tackle some long-standing problems that I think many of us who got into blockchain wanted to try to tackle. And it personally is the reason why I was really interested in blockchain. The main problem is that, like, the traditional financial system is very inefficient, right? So, if you want to go to a bank and do a bank transfer, that's pretty inefficient. There's kind of not a lot of liquidity for borrowing. If you wanted to even get a loan, most of the time that's a very complicated process. Even if you had the collateral and could prove that you had these assets, you have to go through a long process to get a loan. With DeFi, it's very fast. It's all handled by smart contracts. So that reduces a lot of the costs and friction that's kind of captured in the traditional financial system. And what I've seen with the new DeFi applications that we're auditing is that now there's many different sectors that these applications are tackling as well. So I think over time that the composable nature of these applications is going to be really strong because the security of these applications will get improved out over time. The user sophistication will also improve over time, but also the applications will become more specific. So that's another benefit. So now I'm going to talk about some applications that we're excited about. At QuantStamp, we've been auditing dozens and dozens of new DeFi applications, including many different DAOs. One DAO that we've worked with pretty closely is called Metacartel DAO. We've also audited almost a dozen projects for the MakerDAO grants ecosystem. So let me just talk about some of them. So 4 of them I'm going to talk about. One is called Idle. The second one is Newell, and then Pull Together and Zero Collateral. So Idle, what they're doing is very much based on this kind of composability money Legos theme. So right now, one of the problems for users of DeFi is that there are a lot of different services where you can get yields on your deposits. And what Idle does is similar to like a wealth front, where they're automatically rebalancing your portfolio and trying to get you the maximum yields for your specific risk parameters. So you don't have to constantly go around and hunt for the best yield. They will automate this process by rebalancing. And I think that's pretty cool because it's kind of another layer on top of these protocols like Compound that can do a meta balancing of all this optimization of the yields. The second project I'm going to talk about is Newell. So Newell, they're a project based out of India that offers global borrowing and lending and margin trading. One of their really cool features is that they are actually coming out with a Newell bank called Juno, which is kind of a bridge between traditional finance and DeFi, and allows people to open a bank account and get access to the great interest rates in DeFi. It's been around for a while, and we're pretty happy to have launched it. The third project I'm going to talk about is Pull Together. So Pull Together is interesting in that it's a very blockchain native creation. It's a brand new idea. So what they're doing is offering a no-loss lottery where if you participate weekly, there's no chance that anyone who participates can lose their funds. And the reason is that they basically pull everyone's funds together and then deposit that into Compound Finance. Every week, they then select a provably random winner. And the winner of that week gets the interest from the whole pool. So everyone else doesn't lose their deposits that they purchased the lottery ticket with. And the other benefit is of a no-loss lottery is that because you never lose your deposit, you never have to spend money for the lottery tickets. They allow you to roll over the lottery tickets from week to week. So, a lot of people buy lottery tickets, and it's usually because there's some kind of psychological reasons why people like to buy lottery tickets to try to win a really big jackpot. And what I like about Pull Together is that they're kind of using this same psychological trick to make something really approachable for people, part of people's daily habits, and adding a better savings element to that. Because if you buy regular lottery tickets and you don't win, then you're kind of spending your money. But here it's encouraging people to save more. And they're also using composability because they're funneling the interest rate payments, but also using Compound to get the interest as well. The last one I'm going to talk about is Zero Collateral. So right now, one of the problems in decentralized lending is that whenever I want to get a loan, I always need to supply collateral that is higher than the amount on my loan. So let's say I want to get like, $100 of USDC loan, I have to maybe supply $200 worth of Ether. And as you can imagine, normally when I go to a bank, like a regular bank to get a loan, usually the whole point of getting a loan is that I don't have the collateral, right? So if I want to, buy a house or get an auto loan, I don't have the cash to be able to supply as collateral, only to take out a fraction of that. So I think they're trying to improve the experience by offering this kind of under collateralized loan. And their initial approach is that when you get your first loan, they will start to track how much interest you paid into the system. And over time, they will, if you get another loan, they will deduct the amount of interest that you paid in. And it's possible eventually to get to a point where you actually don't need any collateral by having continuous, like, kind of a blockchain-based credit score to reduce the amount of your collateral that you use. So I think it's a very interesting idea that's still pretty new, and hopefully over time, we're going to see more of this. Onto the security issues. So, in 2020 alone, there's been about $26 million that's been lost due to hacks in DeFi. On the right, this is pretty recent news where a liquidity pool and balancer was drained due to a deflationary token. Many of the DeFi projects, there's been vulnerabilities that have been found, and in some cases stolen. So one of the largest attack vectors in DeFi is through these under collateralized loans. And the way the attacker does this is they manipulate the price of some assets on the blockchain temporarily, and then they deposit those assets that are temporarily inflated into one of these lending protocols. And then they borrow another asset, a different asset, using this artificially inflated price. And after they borrowed it, the blockchain is immutable. So there's no way that the protocol can get the money back. And in effect, they got free money from inflating some artificial on-chain price. So I'm going to show some examples of this. So first, there's this Statera example, which happened very recently from Balancer. And what they did was, normally in the ERC20 token, when you transfer it, the amount of the token at the start and after the transfer stays the same. This is called the invariant. But the Statera token, it didn't respect this invariant because it's built as a deflationary token. So every time you transfer it, 1% is destroyed. And this can be very confusing for protocols because they're not built to handle this type of token. So what the attacker did was they found a pool that had this deflationary token and some other ones like Ether and Wrapped Bitcoin and Chainlink and some synthetics. And they repeatedly, swapped the token back and forth with Wrapped ETH until there was a very small amount of Statera token left in the pool. And because of the logic in the pool, they were able to use this very small amount of token to swap for all the rest of the assets like Ether and Bitcoin in the pool. And after they've drained all these other assets, they can basically walk away with the money. So, this happened to two different pools and about $500,000 was stolen. Another hack that happened before this one was called DeForce. And in that one, about $25 million was stolen. This actually leveraged a reentrancy attack. So it was somewhat of a known issue. So the attacker was basically able to borrow a lot of other assets on the DeForce's platform and exit with all those assets. and obviously, the blockchain is immutable. So, but fortunately, what happened was that I think the team and some members of the community were actually able to track down the hacker. And at the end, they returned the funds to DeForce. So, that's another type of vulnerability that's out there. The third one that I'm going to talk about is the BZX hacks. So there were actually two of them, and they worked in slightly different ways, but they had the same outcome. Basically, the attacker was able to, open a large uncollateralized, under-collateralized debt position, leave with the debt, and have the, temporarily changed price revert back to normal. So in the first one, what the hacker did was that they artificially inflated the price of wrapped Bitcoin on Uniswap, and this is Uniswap V1, and now Uniswap, there's Uniswap V2. So now the attack is not possible anymore, but they basically took this overpriced wrapped Bitcoin and got a lot of ETH from it, and then just basically walk away the ETH and then have the Bitcoin price return to normal. The second one that they did was using Kyber. So they actually artificially inflated the price of SUSD versus Ether, and then they deposited this overinflated SUSD as a collateral, took out a big loan, and then after they took out the loan, they just don't have to repay the funds. So that was the second attack. And this happened during December, so still fairly recent. The reason is, for showing these examples is that we think security is very crucial for DeFi's growth. Imagine if you were part of these pools or using these products, and one day you find out that whatever funds you had to put in to lend are now gone. It might not be possible to have the team refund you because the project is supposed to be decentralized, and there's no way in many cases to track down the attacker, and so your funds are gone forever. So what this means is that it's much more crucial in this case to have proper security ahead of time, and for the users to be educated when they decide which products to use and how to protect themselves, not to over leverage or to take too many financial risks, and to understand exactly what type of risks they're taking. We think that on top of just doing security audits, that getting security monitoring, live monitoring, encouraging increased transparency from the projects, and also getting insurance in the future is going to help to increase DeFi's potential. And also many of these projects are going to be battle tested over time. And as they get battle tested over time, the risk will start to decrease, if they don't keep adding more features. We're pretty much heavy believers in DeFi, and I think there's a couple of reasons. One is that the world is increasingly global, and so as kind of one of the first internet native generations, we're used to dealing with each other on the internet, making transactions, doing e-commerce, and there's no logical reason why traditional finance is so landlocked, often landlocked to local jurisdictions. The second reason is that it can make markets more transparent and permissionless. It can give people a lot more access to different services and create financial opportunity for people. And I think that many of you in the audience could even be building this next generation of really awesome financial products, and I look forward to seeing what you all build. For Quantstamp's role, we think that our role is to help to secure the decentralized web. There's so much risk out there whenever projects release new products. people kind of jump onto it without fully understanding. And so we're trying to safeguard many of these new projects who are building really cool stuff and making sure that we can continue to have more users join the whole ecosystem and feel secure doing that. And we think that DeFi, it provides a lot of value to society. And this trend grows because of the money Legos. So as people build interesting building blocks, those are kind of permanent, and new people can take advantage of those over time. So we're very much in kind of this building the foundations phase. As part of building the foundations, QuantStamp also recently audited one of the leading Ethereum 2.0 clients for Prismatic Labs. This client is very similar to the Geth client that people use for ETH1. And we think that this is going to have a lot of impacts on DeFi. We recently completed the audit, and the progress is going really well for the Prismatic team. They've done an amazing job in terms of releasing it and having it be so well tested and so well built. Some of the impacts is that once these stages of the 2.0 launches, we can see much lower fees for DeFi. One of the big problems right now is that the fees are so high on these networks because a lot more people are using Ethereum now. They're using it for the stablecoin transactions, for many of the DeFi products. And having lower fees can also decrease the barrier for game companies. Because when you're making large financial transactions on DeFi, you might not care about the high gas fees. But if you're running a game, that becomes a lot more important. With the transition to proof of stake, it also means that the blockchain can process a lot more transactions in terms of throughput. So what that means is we can handle more people who are using this, because right now one of the big bottlenecks is not just in terms of fees, but also how many transactions you can just handle. And in the near term, I think some of this is going to continue to move to layer 2. And there's been many cool companies that's building products for layer 2 that we think are going to start taking off. Lastly, we think that there's going to be some impacts on composability, which is kind of linking all the products together due to sharding, and researchers are still finalizing that, but that's going to continue over time. But maybe we can get a lot of the benefits from having these kind of like the initial ETH 2.0 plus some layer 2 solutions. And yeah, in terms of what's next, we think that there's going to be a lot of great opportunity for growth and development in DeFi. It's definitely going to continue, and that we're still in the early days. And we look forward to seeing what some of you in the audience build, because we're very strong believers ourselves, and we want to see this wave continue. And that's it. If you want to learn more about the recent hacks and dive into it more, you can go to quantstamp.com/blog, where we try to break down the hacks, or go to our QR code. And thanks everyone for attending my talk. Appreciate it.